Hi, this is Mike Lipkin, co-author of this fabulous book called You Belong Here, together with my co-author, the remarkable Dr. Diane McIntosh. Diane, always great to be in the virtual studio with you as we record this podcast together.
Always a pleasure, Mike.
Excellent. And so the theme of our conversation today is, I think, a crucial one, and that is understanding that pressure is the price that you pay for success. And there is a quote that says, a diamond is a coal that's been put under pressure. And so, Diane, just talk to me a little bit about what are the qualities that enable you to thrive under pressure? And in fact, what does pressure actually mean?
Well, that's a good question. And I didn't know that you were going to frame it exactly like that. I think that in order for us to actually act and drive and move forward, we have to have some reason for doing it. Something drives us. We're hungry, so we go to the kitchen and make some food. There's always some kind of pressure that drives us to do something. If we had no pressure on us at all, we would do nothing. So there is good pressure and then there's bad pressure. But at the core of this, pressure helping us to thrive is building resilience. When you're going through times that are challenging, the idea of resilience is not just getting through a challenging time. The idea of resilience is that you come through a challenging time and you learn from it and you become stronger. So every time you're faced with a major challenge, you've got a little more pressure than you like, so it's making you a little bit more uncomfortable. Getting through that, succeeding, making your way through that successfully builds your resilience, and it helps you to take that next challenge even with more strength.
Yeah, so I like that a lot. And for me, when I hear the word pressure, I actually also hear the word privilege. And one of my favorite quotes is, pressure is a privilege and you will miss it when it's gone. Because by definition, pressure says that there are big expectations of you that you've signed up for, and that people actually expect you to achieve a certain standard. And so I think there's a big difference between pressure and stress. For me, this conversation we're having right now is pressure because we're having a conversation that's completely spontaneous. We know what we want to cover off in the conversation, but it's not like we've rehearsed it. There's no teleprompter in front of us. And there are going to be people who will watch this and form an opinion of Dr. McIntosh and Mr. Lipkin and You Belong Here based on a 20-minute conversation. So this is pressure. But Diane, for me personally, this kind of pressure, this is a narcotic for me. Like if I didn't have this kind of pressure, I would ask myself, well, what's the point? And so this kind of pressure, I feel, brings out the best because there's no alternative but to go through the pressure. So once you and I start this conversation, we're going to create the best conversation we can. And then at the end of the 20 minutes, maybe it's the best conversation we could ever have had, or maybe not, but it'll be a deposit on making it even better next time. So in other words, Diane, it seems to me, and we went through the pressure putting this book together, that if you look at pressure the right way, it could become an absolute boost to your feeling of well-being and significance and contribution to the world. Does that make sense?
I agree with you, Mike. And actually, it speaks to the next part of that chapter in the book, which is that you can feel afraid and safe at the same time. So I feel very safe in all of my conversations with you, and actually kind of excited about the fact that we're going to talk about something fun. And you always provoke me to think about things in a different way. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you don't sound ridiculous as you're trying to make your way through this conversation, because we're sharing it with others. So that little bit of fear or pressure also helps you to, I think, just feel more alive in the conversation. So we're kind of living that right now. There's a value to having a goal that you know you're moving towards. We have some pressure to get to that goal, but it allows us to thrive.
So of all the concepts we write about in the book, this is the one that I like the most because it is apparently contradictory. And when I put this to my audiences, I say you can feel scared and safe at the same time. They say, well, give me an example, because they can't quite make it out. So the example I give is the one that you gave me, and that is, if you're sitting on the couch and you're watching a horror movie on Netflix, well, you're scared vicariously, exactly, but you're completely safe because you're in your nest with your loved ones. And then if we take it into the workplace, like now, in this instance, I'm scared, but it's with a small c, because I know that I've got all the resources, I've got a partner, I've got the expertise, I've got the experience to make this a great conversation. And so there's a little bit of fear and there's a lot of confidence, and that's how one can be scared at the same time. Now, there might be some times where you've got more fear than confidence, but Diane, talk to me about how you can ramp up your level of confidence when you need it, because without that inner game, without that confidence, the external challenges may overwhelm you.
So I just want to go back and say that I think you mean scared with a small s, not a small c. So you Correct. Feel safe with a big S and scared with a small s.
Thank you for that.
So maybe can you reformulate that question for me, because I was kind of stuck on scared starting with a C.
Yes.
And I didn't quite catch what you were asking.
Yes, no, perfect. So in this instance, I've got a lot of confidence and a little bit of fear because I know this is well within my bailiwick. Yep. There are going to be some situations, Diane, that I haven't confronted before. So I will have more fear and less confidence, but I somehow have to ramp up that confidence so it becomes bigger than my fear, so I can function in the situation rather than not get into the situation because I'm too scared that I won't be able to handle it. So how do you ramp up your confidence in a situation where you may not have had a lot of expertise or experience so that you can be bigger than your fear?
And that's where resilience comes in right there. And I know I spend an awful lot of time talking about the power of resilience, but we're always going to be faced with new, novel situations we haven't done before. And the way that we get through those, the way that we, as you said, get yourself prepared for those is the way that we talk to ourselves, right? Our inner dialogue. You know what? I haven't done this before. This is my inside thought, but I can do difficult things. I've done something like this before. That inner dialogue, if it was negative and you're constantly saying, you know what, you're a loser, you're probably going to fail, you will fail. So that the way that you talk to yourself, bringing things down to a simplified form, right? We're having this discussion. I'm not thinking about 57,000 other things. I'm focused on what I'm doing right now and trying to shut off all of the other information that's incoming, particularly if I have some negative thoughts, and preventing myself from going down wormholes. So I think relying on your past strength, and that takes practice. It takes practice to sort of push back on those negative thoughts that you may have, is part of cognitive behavioral therapy. That's at its core, is that we have dysfunctional thoughts sometimes that undermine our confidence, talk about ourselves in a negative way, identifying those and then learning how to confront them. That's not true. Again and again, and moving them aside is actually how therapy works. Really good therapy works. And it's something that when you do it more and more, your brain becomes wired to do it automatically, and you're able to not even go there anymore.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I was coaching a client yesterday, and she was going through an incredibly stressful time because she's confronted now with a series of marquee presentations on which an entire product portfolio depends. And she wasn't sleeping, and she's a mom with 2 young kids, and so the whole family was paying the price. And then she said, just before her last presentation, instead of asking herself the question, what happens if I fail? She said, but what happens if I'm great? And just asking herself that question, but what happens if I'm great? She was great. People came up to her afterwards and said, wow, you were amazing. And so she went through this breakthrough in her mind where now her default question is not what happens if I fail, it is, but what happens if I'm great?
In
So I love,
fairness to people who may be listening to this and struggling with anxiety, an anxiety disorder, it is really tough to do that. And that's why sometimes we need help from others, a therapist, a counselor who can help us to recognize those dysfunctional thoughts we're having. So Mike is dealing with someone who's otherwise healthy, so is able to turn their thoughts around like that. But if you're really struggling with being able to change your thoughts like that and spending a lot of time with mean, dysfunctional thoughts that are really impacting your ability to function, that's the time you need to go and talk to someone.
yeah, which is takes us to the third element here, Diane, and this is another favorite of mine, and that is share with us the difference between fear, which can be an entirely healthy and in fact necessary emotion, and anxiety, which can be one that could be detrimental to your health.
So there will be people who will argue with me about the fact that there's, using the words fear and anxiety differently. I do this because it helps me to conceptualize the difference between something that is normal and actually really important for our survival and something that is negative and associated with illness and functional impairment. So I think about fear as being really something that's necessary to keep us alive. If you have a dog that's coming at you, growling, teeth bared, no owner in sight, you need to have a fear response to that so that you can basically a fight or flight response. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your muscles are full with blood that are receiving oxygen so that you can run away or fight back. That is necessary to survive. Anxiety is fear gone bad in my mind. And what that means is that you have, fear is associated with something that's known, it's clear, that dog's coming at me, its teeth are bared. When you have an anxiety disorder, you don't know why you're anxious. It's unknown, it's vague, and it's visceral, scary, but you don't know why. So it's fear that is starting to hijack your brain. And what happens is when you have an actual anxiety disorder is that it starts to take over everything you do. Why am I worried? Why is this bothering me? I know this is crazy. I know it's over the top. I know it's too much, but there's no identifiable cause for why you're having that anxiety. And that's why it's really important. Anyone who's listening, if you're struggling with constantly feeling anxious and there's no dog running at you all the time that might hurt you, that suggests that you've got a challenge with anxiety that might benefit from some professional support.
So give us the quote from your, I think it would be from your Nova Scotian heritage. What's that fabulous quote?
I think it sort of is founded in this whole idea about mindfulness, that we all have anxiety. All of us experience times when we're fearful or we feel anxiety that's excessive. The important thing in learning how to be mindful is allowing that anxiety to come in the front door and go out the back door, but do not serve it tea. And what that means is accept that you have anxiety, recognize, yep, I have it, it's real, but I'm not going to let it sit inside me. I'm not going to serve it tea. I'm not going to spend time on it. I'm going to let it flow through me, because if you let it sit inside you, that's how it ends up breaking you down and impacting your ability to function at work, at home, in all of your relationships.
That's so good. And, just my version of that, Diane, is I used to suffer from anxiety. Now I experience tension. And the tension that I experience is the pull of the challenge that I've set myself and the situation that I'm in. And why there's tension is I know that what got me here is not going to get me there. So I've got to expand my capacity. I've got to sharpen my skills. I've got to build my network. I've got to do the work to get me ready to fully rise to the challenge coming at me. And so there's tension. But that's why, for me, pressure and tension are two foes or enemies that have now become my best friend. Pressure and tension, which is a whole lot better than anxiety, which I kind of feel is almost like, I had root canal yesterday, all right, for my sins. And I see anxiety as almost like that cavity eroding the enamel. So that's why I don't want anxiety, and I've got rid of it. as far as my tooth is concerned, but from a psychological standpoint now, I get rid of it by contemplating it not as anxiety or something negative or something dark or something that I wish wasn't happening. It's simply the pressure and the tension that is building muscle.
And Mike, I see that as sort of part of the next aspect of this discussion. When you're facing a difficult time, you have to have a root canal or whatever the situation is. How do you turn that concept of that experience, that pressure or that tension, into a win? How, when you faced a challenging situation, yeah, it's unpleasant. I didn't do well in that situation. It didn't work for me. What did I learn from that? What is the opportunity that just came up? And that's that building yourself up, I think, is part of that. It's part of the resilience, how you speak to yourself. If you're constantly saying nasty things to yourself, you will feel badly about yourself. Your brain becomes patterned to see yourself as a failure or a loser. If you keep telling yourself that, again, back to cognitive behavioral therapy, they help you identify you're calling yourself a loser. What's the evidence for that? What supports that? And helps you realize that, you know what, I'm not being kind to myself. How do I stop those thoughts? One of the ways that I deal with failure, with challenges that can absolutely very frustrating, I let them in the front door and out the back door, but try not to serve them tea. As soon as they're out the back door, okay, what did I learn? How can I do this differently? What is the solution so I don't end up there again? That has really been freeing for me.
Yeah, so good. There's a verb that I heard the other day, Diane, which is how do you habitize the right actions? So how do you turn the right actions into habits? Mm-hmm. And certainly, as someone who's got well-documented history of having gone through depression, I used to ask myself the most disempowering questions like, Mike, how could you have been so stupid? Mike, what were you thinking? Mike, how could you have done that? How could you have been so awful? And those are disempowering questions because there's no good answer to those questions, as opposed to what have you learned? Or as opposed to saying to yourself, well, you stepped into the arena, you took on the challenge, you were willing to experiment. And the fact that you didn't get a desired result doesn't mean you failed. And this is the question that I'm asking myself right now. How did you grow? Why should you be proud of yourself? What's the lesson learned? And so, Diane, let's talk a little bit here as we move to a close about a statement: failure is a sign that you are winning. Why is that? Why is failure a sign that you're winning?
That can be taken a number of different ways. And one of the thoughts I have, you don't actually know what pure joy is unless you know what it feels like to feel really a lot of pain and sadness, right? We know how sweet it is to experience success because we know how horrible it is to experience failure. So failure is a part of any pursuit. We have wins, we have losses, and growing from each loss or failure or challenge is actually part of paving the path to feeling that joy of success. And we have to have those ups and downs in life. It's a real challenge in parenting where people want to protect their kids and no one ever fails. Everyone gets the red ribbon. You have to have those failures. It's the thing that helps to build that pressure to move ahead. And it's better to learn how to fail and how to lose and figure out where your strengths are and build on those in a safe environment while you're being as a child. That's how you learn. And you also learn that you got to be in a reciprocal relationship with the world. If you raise a narcissist who thinks that the sun rises and sets on them, they don't learn how to have reciprocal relationships with others. They use other people to get what they want. So to me, it's a great way of thinking about failure. Is an experience, but it is not the journey.
I love that. And, my version of that is no is always a part of yes. So, many no's get you to yes. So I'm always pitching new ideas and new products and new books and new concepts. And so I get 9 no's for every yes. So when I get a yes, it is made up of the 9 no's that led to the yes.
Yeah.
So, just to wrap on this final quote that I think folks will enjoy, and that is, winners will always lose more than losers because they're trying more things. And so there's a direct correlation between the amount of things you try, the amount of experiments you partake in, and the eventual success. And by the way, if you go from 0 to success, well, that success may not be sustainable, or it might not be very large, because every sustainable large success that I've achieved has been populated with a number of missteps, fumbles, and stumbles along the way. Does that make sense?
Being part of a startup, you fail fast. You got to be agile. You got to keep moving. You're going to make mistakes because you're trying to be innovative and creative and bringing something new that no one else has done before. How do you know that that's going to be a straight line? And my goodness, it adds richness to life to have those ups and downs. And every time I learn something not to do and something I should try differently.
Love that. So let me close on a quote from JFK when he said, "Hold fast to the very best of the past and move fast into the very best of the future."
The quote king, my goodness, Mike Lipkin, everyone.
And if I could say it with a Boston accent, it would sound even better.
Even better.
Another fantastic call. I know our listeners, our viewers will feel exactly the same way, and I can't wait until the next one.
Thank you, Mike. Great to see you.